Hey everyone, it's Jim
And Charles
from Mellow amps, and it's time to get the power resistors on. Caution everyone, there are 3 different resistance values in the filter network. So it's very important that you should always be doing this, but it's extremely important that you put them on an ohm meter and check to make sure you get the right resistor in the right spot. These are actually labeled 10 watt 220 RJ. And J means that they are plus or minus 5%. So there could be a 10% variance, but because these are very important to the filter circuit, I've matched them in pairs. So they don't actually have to be dead nuts on their stated value, but they have to match as pairs. So you can see we're actually very close in this case. If it was a little lower or a little higher, it wouldn't matter, so long as they're matched as pairs.
Now, these we're going to do one pair at a time, and we're going to start with the R2 resistors here.
Yeah, and it's well worth dropping in quickly on this power supply schematic and having a look. So we're going to start with R2. R2 is 220R, 10 watt, and then we're going to go and we'll move on to R3 and R4, and you can see the values change. So we become 120R and 1R0 on R4. And we'll talk about this later in the build so that you understand why the filter stages are actually different from each other. But they're sort of similar because they're all using 1,000 microfarad filter caps. Okay.
So grab your 220Rs, check them with your multimeter, and warm up that soldering iron. And let's get ready to install these.
Okay, now these power resistors have to be installed with some space off the board. They get hot. That's pretty typical for a filter supply power resistor or wherever a high wattage. So anything over perhaps maybe 2 watts, maybe even 3 watts. Once you get to 5 watts and up, unless they're really heavily overrated, you want them spaced off the board. Or a vertical type of resistor that will allow, there's resistors that are specifically designed to be installed vertically, so they're completely open air. So this is a good spacer that I use. You can use any piece of scrap.
We're only lifting it 2 or 3 millimeters above the board just to get some air underneath it.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more than 1/16 of an inch. So let's figure out where we want to bend these.
And as usual, you want the label facing upwards in case a technician gets in here and needs to replace something.
So that is actually a little bit on the big side, so let's come a little bit over to here.
And we're actually going to install these from the top of the board with them resting on the spacer.
Yeah, because there's enough room to come in solder, so we can use Charles's trick. And because this is, I consider this to be the front over here, I put the labels facing this way. You can do it any way you want. It's just handy to have the labels oriented in such a way that you can see them all together as sets.
And it looks a lot neater too.
Yeah, it's not going to change how the amp sounds, but I'm not sure what. But when a build is really neatly done, there's just something special about it. And because you're building your own gear yourself, you can take your time and do a really nice job.
And what temperature are we coming in at?
We're going to cool off just a little bit from the big filter cap. So I think we're going to try 370 C, which is about 690 Fahrenheit, and see how that works. There's a fair amount of mass here, so we still want to have a little bit of extra heat. Okay, I'm going to hold for a second because I'd like some good flow through. You always want some good flow through, but sometimes, so take your time and stay away from these small caps because you could melt the label, and it won't damage the cap unless you go right through, but it'll look ugly. So and I'm going to hold for a second and allow some flow through. I'm going to clean my tip and just let it cool off for an extra couple of seconds. And now I'm going to pull the spacer. And I'm going to show you the space we've got. You see that? It's not critical. It can cap, the resistor could be up a little bit more. It'll be just perfectly fine like that. So don't fuss about that. Let's flip it over and see how we did. And here we got absolutely perfect flow through. And here we're just a little short. So if you had to work over here near the cap, just position yourself carefully so that you don't
touch the insulation.
Yeah. So.
Sorry, just trying to find our solder here.
We have like 50 pounds of solder in my lab, so you think we could find something quickly, but no. Now some of the solder is really heavy gauge, which we won't be using on this kit. So I'm going to just reheat, I'm going to flow a little bit, and I'm off. And let's get this snipped as soon as they cool off. Okay, so go ahead, let me flip it over here. So you've got another R2, which is also, we're having fun this morning, which is also 220R. So go ahead and get it on your ohm meter and then drop it in there again with a spacer. And I'll see you back. Okay, so next up are the two R3s. And Charles has got it on our ohm meter and it's awfully close to 120 ohms. And here's R3, 120R. So yeah, so Bob's your uncle. So let's get both R3s on the same way and we'll see you back. Okay, so last up is the pair of R4s. And that is a 1 ohm or 1R resistor. Now, when you get to very small values, 1 ohm, a couple ohms and below, most regular ohm meters have trouble. So we have a very high quality bench ohm meter we can use to get a much more accurate reading on a low resistance value. So if you do test these, don't be surprised if your ohm meter is wandering around. Just make sure that you're somewhere in the ballpark of 1 ohm.
And it should be the correct one.
And you'll be good. It's actually not that critical that these are matched at all. The bigger ones, it's more important. But once you get down to an ohm of resistance in a filter network, it really doesn't matter. We could have 1 here and 2 ohm over here and it wouldn't make any difference whatsoever. An ohm of resistance is really not a lot. Okay, I think you know what you're doing, so go ahead and drop those 2 on and I'll see you back in a minute. Okay, so I've gone ahead and tilted the board up and got the camera focused right in so you can really see where the values go, so you can confirm in your own build exactly the correct placement of the resistors, because that's very important for the filter network, and we'll be talking about why later on. Okay, well done everyone. What's next?